This video will contain descriptions of violence and may be disturbing to some viewers. If you're easily frightened, discretion is advised. Alright, with that out of the way, buckle up because we're counting down the top 10 worst serial killers in history. These monsters left a trail of bodies and shattered lives in their wake, and their crimes continue to fascinate and horrify us today. So let's start with the least. Number 10, Ted Bundy. Theodore Robert Bundy was a notorious American criminal known for his heinous acts. He committed a series of assaults and murders, targeting over 30 young women. The timeline of Ted Bundy's killing spree began in approximately 1974. He tricked his victims into approaching his car by pretending to be injured. He also took advantage of women by manipulating their trust. He would bring them to a remote location and then overpower and eliminate them. He would occasionally return to the body for extended periods to engage in inappropriate activities, even though the smell was overwhelming. During his trial, he garnered quite a bit of attention due to his charm and intelligence. He struggled for years to evade the death penalty. However, his evasion of justice came to an end on January 24, 1989, when he faced execution. Number 9. John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was a notorious American serial killer and sex offender. He committed heinous crimes, including rape, torture, and murder of at least 33 young men and boys during the period from 1967 to 1978. Gacy often entertained as Pogo the Clown or Patches the Clown, two characters he invented at charitable events and hospitals for children. Gacy committed all of his murders within the confines of his ranch-style residence, located near Norridge, a community in Norwood Park Township and a suburb of Chicago. He often lured victims to his house and deceived them into wearing handcuffs by pretending to demonstrate a magic trick. After subjecting his victim to torture and assaults, he would proceed to end their life either by suffocation or strangulation using a garrote. In March 1980, Gacy was sentenced to the death penalty. During his time on death row at Menard Correctional Center, he dedicated a significant amount of time to painting. He was executed on May 10, 1994, through lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center. Number 8. Tsutomu Miyazaki. Tsutomu Miyazaki was born prematurely, resulting in the development of deformed hands. As a result, he became a target for bullying at school, and his academic performance started to decline. He struggled with feelings of inadequacy and had trouble connecting with others. He started kidnapping and killing young girls in 1988 and 1989, showing a disturbing change in his mental state. He gained notoriety with the nicknames Little Girl Murderer and Dracula. He took a 4-year-old girl named Mary Kano on August 22, 1988. The individual committed a heinous act of violence, desecrating the victim's body and leaving it to decay before removing certain body parts. All 4 of his children were young children, ranging from 4 to 7 years old. He engaged in necrophilia after strangling them. Additionally, he consumed the blood of one of his victims and ingested a portion of their hand. Miyazaki was caught in the act of assaulting a young girl in a park. Despite being captured, he remained composed. Miyazaki was hanged on June 17, 2008. Number 7. The West Mesa Bone Collector. In 2009, the spotlight was on the mysterious killer who was discovered when police found 11 bodies buried in an area of Albuquerque known as West Mesa. After receiving a tip about a woman who had spotted a human femur bone at a former construction site, the police decided to excavate the area. To their dismay, they uncovered the remains of women who had been reported missing in 2003 and 2005. Additionally, there are at least 13 more women who are currently missing and could potentially be connected to the West Mesa Bone Collective. These cases were reported as recently as 2006. The police had multiple suspects in mind, but they didn't have sufficient evidence to build a strong case against any of them. Despite receiving around 20 to 30 tips per year, no new evidence has helped progress the case. The current reward for valuable information is $100,000. Number 6. Richard Ramirez. Richard Ramirez, born in Texas in 1960, was an American serial killer, rapist, and burglar. He started using drugs heavily and became interested in Satanism. Referred to as the Night Stalker, Ramirez operated during the years 1984 to 1985. As a young boy, Ramirez looked up to his cousin Mike, who had served in the Vietnam War. Unfortunately, Mike had a disturbing preoccupation with violence against women, and he callously showed Richard images of women he had taken during his time in Vietnam. At that moment, Ramirez, who was only 13 years old, witnessed the tragic event of the man shooting his own wife. In 1985, Ramirez was captured after killing 14 people and inflicting torture upon dozens of others. The series of violent crimes he committed, including murders, rape, and robberies, spanned a period of 14 months. In the case of Vincent Zazara and his wife Maxine's murder, Ramirez first shot the husband and then tragically took the life of the wife by stabbing her. He proceeded to remove Maxine Zazara's eyes. He showed no signs of remorse, and when he received the death sentence by gas chamber. Number 5. Servant Girl Annihilator. The Servant Girl Annihilator, one of America's earliest serial killers, was responsible for the deaths of 7 women and 1 man in Austin, Texas, from December 1884 to December 1885. All the victims were domestic staff, either killed while sleeping or dragged out of their beds and killed outside their homes. In a single night, on December 24, 1885, the murderer took the lives of 3 individuals using an axe. This gruesome act led to the killer being known as the Austin Axe Murderer. However, it is worth considering that the Servant Girl Annihilator could have been Nathan Elgin, a local individual with a unique physical characteristic: 4 toes on 1 foot. Interestingly, footprints matching this description were discovered at several of the murder scenes. In 1886, police officer John Bracken fatally shot Elgin. Bracken shot him after stepping in to assist a girl who had been forcibly taken from a salon by an intoxicated man who was assaulting her. Her name was Julia. Luckily, considering the considerable amount of time that has passed since the crimes took place, it is highly unlikely that he is still alive. Number 4. Dean Corll. Corll, who managed his mother's small candy business and gained the nickname the Candy Man when his crimes were uncovered, was responsible for the infamous Houston mass murders that took place in Houston, Texas from 1970 to 1973. Corll, along with his 2 accomplices, Elmer Wayne Henley and David Brooke, would lure young boys to his apartment, abduct and subject them to torture before ultimately murdering and burying them in nearby rural locations. The victims' mass graves were found in various locations across the greater Houston area. Specific 4 were buried in San Augustine in East Texas, 7 were buried on the beach at High Island in Southeast Texas, and 17 were buried in a Houston boathouse belonging to Corll. Some of the bodies showed signs of sexual mutilation, while others had cords around their necks and tape covering their feet and mouths. In August 1973, Henley shot and killed Corll after a heated altercation at Corll's house. Later, Henley admitted the murders to the police and led them to the graves. He called his mother and confessed. Number 3. Ahmad Siraji. Ahmad Siraji, an Indonesian serial killer, gained infamy as the Sorcerer. It is reported that he was responsible for the deaths of 42 individuals from 1986 to 1997. One unsettling aspect was the motive and method he used to kill his victim. He said that in a dream, his deceased father told him that by drinking the saliva of 70 deceased young women, he would become a mystic healer. Due to time constraints, he resorted to targeting young girls for his crimes, instead of searching for 70 deceased women. He presented himself as a shaman and attracted numerous women who desired wealth and beauty. Once he received payment, he would lead them to a sugarcane field and bury them waist deep, insisting it was part of the ritual. He proceeded to harm them and consume their saliva. He would then bury the decaying body with their head pointed towards his house, which he believed would grant him greater power. On July 2008, he was sentenced to death and executed by firing squad. Number 2. The Zodiac Killer. Zodiac is widely known as one of the most notorious unsolved serial killer cases in the United States. In a similar fashion to Jack the Ripper's actions in London almost a century earlier, the Zodiac Killer played mind games with the police and the San Francisco Bay Area press. Throughout the late 1960s, the killer sent mysterious messages and clues, keeping everyone on edge for a year. In a chilling game of cat and mouse, the killer made his presence felt among city residents through a series of disturbing actions. By 2022, only 2 of the killer's 4 ciphers had been definitively solved. The killer had demanded that the ciphers be published in the paper, threatening to claim more victims if his demands were not met. In 1969, the police began investigating a case involving the tragic double murder of 2 high school students who were parked at a lover's lane. There have been 5 confirmed murders associated with the case, even though the Zodiac, who referred to himself by that name, stated that he had killed a total of 37 people. There have been many suspects throughout the years, but the case remains unsolved. Number 1. Jack the Ripper. Jack the Ripper is widely regarded as one of the most notorious serial killers in history. There are numerous serial killers with a higher count of victims, but what sets them apart is the limited information available about him. Jack the Ripper was a notorious serial killer who successfully concealed his identity, even from the renowned Scotland Yard police force. He operated primarily in the Whitechapel district of London in 1888, which is why he is sometimes known as the Whitechapel Murderer. Jack the Ripper specifically targeted female sex workers due to their proximity to the slums, where there was a lower police presence. This made them vulnerable and easier for him to victimize. The murders were particularly disturbing because he mutilated the corpses in a horrifying manner. The murder of Mary Jane Kelly was incredibly brutal, surpassing all of his other heinous acts. The condition of her body was severely altered, and her face was severely damaged. Her intestines were taken out and positioned under her head. Both her breasts and her heart were absent from the crime scene. So there you have it, our list of the top 10 worst serial killers in history. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more true crime content. And let me know in the comments below what other dark topics you'd like to see covered.